Tonight on Denver7 News at 10, a brutal crime still unsolved.
I don't know how you deal with the murder and torture of your daughter and then being convicted in public opinion for 24 years.
Decades later, there's still no justice for JonBenet Ramsey. Tonight, we hear from an investigative journalist who spent decades on the case. The breakthrough she hopes to see soon.
This little 6-year-old, innocent, sweet, lovely little girl has no chance of her case being solved if somebody doesn't move forward and examine and look at the DNA.
Scrambling to adjust a promised coronavirus stockpile already drained.
I am just devastated by these flip-flops on life or death items.
Why local hospitals say this bump in the road won't push their vaccine plans off course.
And seniors struggling through the pandemic.
I do believe that if I got COVID, that I would not make it.
Tonight, some are questioning why they still haven't received a shot as healthier Coloradans get in line before them. Good evening and welcome to Denver7 News at 10. I'm Ann Trujillo.
And I'm Shannon Ogden. Glad you're with us tonight. And tonight, frustration and anger from Governor Jared Polis after finding out a promised federal stockpile of vaccine doesn't exist. A bitter pill to swallow for sure, but tonight local hospitals tell us it may not drastically affect their rollout.
All right, so let's backtrack. How did we get here? Governor Jared Polis says he was expecting more than 200,000 doses of the vaccine to be delivered next week, promised by the Department of Health and Human Services just days ago to help ramp up distribution.
But then a Washington Post report revealed that promised federal stockpile was already exhausted. So instead of 210,000 doses, Colorado will only receive 79,000 doses next week.
Today, shockingly, Secretary Azar tells us there is, in fact, no reserve dosage. Now, that might have been the right policy from the get-go, but we had all been led to believe that there was a reserve that was going to be released in our state that would have been 200,000 to 300,000 doses next week that now are not going to be available.
Now, some good news here. It's very unlikely hospitals will have to cancel or reschedule appointments. And we reached out to several of the major hospital systems here in Colorado. They say certainly they're disappointed, but add they only book appointments based on the vaccine supply they currently have. And they also wait for official confirmation from the state to find out how many doses each facility will get in the coming week. And that usually happens on Fridays and Saturdays.
And Governor Polis says if we receive the promised 200,000 to 300,000 vaccines, half of all Coloradans age 70 and older could have been vaccinated by the end of next week. The plan now is to stick to the original goal and have 70% of that group vaccinated by the end of February, a goal the governor says is attainable.
Frustration, though, settling in for Coloradans in that 70-plus age group. They know they're eligible to receive the vaccine, but some of them still can't get it. In fact, just about 4% of Coloradans have been vaccinated. Denver7's CB Cotton spoke to one woman who says her health is deteriorating, but her healthy friends are in line before her.
For the past year, some people have only experienced life through their TV screen.
There are so many questions.
I am alone. I don't have visitors. All my food is ordered in. I don't go out.
For people like Ann, watching TV
I'm Shannon Ogden with your Denver7 update.
is the safest connection to reality during a pandemic.
I do believe that if I got COVID, that I would not make it.
Ann doesn't want us to share her identity, but she does want you to know she's one of the hundreds of thousands of Coloradans that are 70 and older eligible to get the COVID-19 vaccine, but still without one.
I'm not unique in this. There are many others out there like me.
But she is unique in that she's not only in a high-risk age category, she also has 2 pre-existing conditions.
I suffer from leukemia and I suffer from diabetes.
Ann had hoped her many health risk might mean her healthcare provider could vaccinate her sooner.
Some of my friends who are not, fortunately, in my situation, are already scheduled with other providers to get their COVID shot in January. I have not heard a word.
But the state has admitted vaccinating everyone 70 and older right away is tough. With an estimated 530,000 Coloradans in that age category, Colorado hopes to have 70% of them vaccinated by the end of February. But those vaccinations are on a first-come, first-served basis, regardless of one's pre-existing conditions.
It is wearing on me, and I'm sure others, to have been isolated for such a long time.
We were able to get in contact with Anne's healthcare provider. We explained her situation, and they tell us they're going to contact her tomorrow to try to schedule her vaccination appointment as soon as possible. CB Cotton, Denver7.
Yeah, let's hope that works. Thank you, CB. With less than 5 days until he is sworn in on the Capitol's West Front, President-elect Joe Biden isn't wasting time in laying out his vaccination plan.
He called the current rollout a dismal failure and promised change. He wants to deliver 100 million shots in the first 100 days. Biden says he'll use FEMA and the National Guard to set up 100 emergency vaccination centers around the country.
And he is promising the federal government will streamline the vaccine distribution process to the states. He also plans to launch a public education program to sway people who might be thinking twice about being vaccinated.
Well, as of tonight, President Trump has not directly recognized Joe Biden as the president-elect, but today, Vice President Mike Pence called Vice President-elect Kamala Harris to congratulate her. He also offered help with the transition. Meanwhile, ABC News reports President Trump plans to leave the White House Wednesday morning, right before the inauguration. He reportedly requested a large send-off from Joint Base Andrews. The president is expected to give a speech to supporters, and he hopes to have a military band and perhaps a military flyover.
Of course, the nation's capital is on high alert tonight ahead of next week's inauguration. Colorado National Guard members have been asked to help with security, and at least 230 people have been deployed. And they will join the roughly 25,000 other National Guard members who will work with Secret Service and law enforcement in Washington. And the city of Denver is bracing for possible protests in the coming days. The city and county building and the Webb Municipal building, they will all be closed next Wednesday and Thursday. Other city offices will operate on a modified schedule, closing at 2 p.m. Tuesday through Friday. We're also already seeing an increased security presence at the Colorado State Capitol with extra fencing and police officers.
And even as plans move ahead for the inauguration of Joe Biden, the Senate's gearing up for President Trump's impeachment trial. Now, one defense being pitched tonight is that the president should not be held responsible because the attack on the Capitol was pre-planned by extremists. Colorado Congresswoman Diana DeGette, though, says she doesn't buy it because President Trump clearly encouraged the crowd to head to Capitol Hill.
Early in my career, I was a public defender, and sometimes you have tough cases like this, and you come up with crazy defenses like this because it's all you've got. It just seems, well, weak to me.
House Speaker Nancy Pelosi has not yet said when she plans to send the impeachment article to the Senate.
More than 2 decades have now passed since the murder of a 6-year-old Boulder girl, a case that captivated the world's attention.
Now, as we know, the person who killed JonBenet Ramsey has never been brought to justice. And tonight, 2020 revisited the crime and continued the call for justice. And it included insight from veteran Denver journalist Paula Woodward.
And tonight she sits down with Chief Investigative Reporter Tony Kowaleski to talk about the big unanswered questions 24 years later.
Patsy Ramsey dialed 911, telling police her daughter had been kidnapped. Why? Well, she had found a ransom note.
The news broke the day after Christmas in 1996.
Then around 1:30 yesterday afternoon, police say a family member found the little girl's body during what they call a more thorough search of the home.
A beauty pageant winner, a murder mystery.
Let me address very directly, I did not kill my daughter, JonBenet.
That captivated the world.
There was no accountability for the mistakes that were made.
Paula Woodward is one of the most respected investigative reporters in Denver history.
24 years later, I would say it's never been about the death of a little girl.
JonBenet enjoys painting ceramics.
It's about all the things that contributed to it.
I wanna be.
Especially the child beauty pageant videos and pictures.
She has covered the story and uncovered details since the very beginning.
The story is one of the top stories I've covered. I had so many unanswered questions. I wanted to find out how many backroom deals were done on this story.
Woodward's book, We Have Your Daughter, dives into the 24-year-old investigation and the questions that remain unanswered.
Why did people behave so badly? The police, the district attorney's office, the media, why were they so obsessed with convicting the Ramseys when the evidence wasn't there?
Do you think we are going to find the person responsible for ending JonBenet's life?
I think the person who killed JonBenet Ramsey can be found through DNA, but you have to actively search for it. And I don't know if the Boulder Police Department, who has control of the case now, is doing that.
When people recognize you and walk up to you, what are the questions you get about this case?
The most common question I get is, what do you think happened? Who did it? That's the question. And I've never answered it. I don't know who did it. I just don't like all that was done wrong on this case from day one. I wish that someone would take enough initiative to say, hey, this really was wrong. Let's see if there's anything left to do. And I think what's left to do is follow that DNA.
A respected investigative reporter now calling for action and accountability. I'm Chief Investigative Reporter Tony Kowaleski.
And after the murder, the Ramsey family never spent another night in that Boulder home.
The family sold the home to a group of investors in 1998. Their plan was to resell it and donate the proceeds to the JonBenet Ramsey Children's Foundation. But the home's history, well, as you can imagine, makes it a tough sell.
If you have a house that's had a homicide, that automatically weeds out a decent number of prospective buyers.
Right now, the home is back on the market. It has been listed several times since the last sale a decade ago.
Coming up on Denver7 News at 10, a picture-perfect home, or so it seemed.
And when I said I want to rent it, everything started to unravel.
A warning tonight about online rental scams, how to make sure you don't get taken for a ride.
Afternoon highs in the 40s today across the Front Range. It's about to get colder. I'll let you know when the snow arrives coming up.